Okay. That's great. What? Where's my face? I don't really care for that. You look great. Thanks, babe. If you're all standing here, so it'll be like Morgan looks really good. Especially compared to that kind of oafish looking character on the back. That's good. With the lazy eye that's also bloody. With the lazy eye. Lazy eye. They should name their child ROCZN. What does that say? Oh, awesome. Awesome. It's weird. Yep.
Hey, Morgan.
Hey.
Oops, this meeting is being recorded. Let me...
That's what it told me.
Make you the host. Okay, I just made you the host. Can you... Okay. Do you have all the controls and stuff now?
Come on. Come back.
Morgan.
Joe says hi.
Hey.
I don't work for Momentum anymore.
Oh, you don't? Where do you work?
He
I work for myself.
He does his eBay gig full time.
Nice. That is sweet. I seem to have a bunch of controls, so.
Okay. You should be able to mute people as they come in or as needed,
okay.
By clicking on like participants and all that. And yeah, do whatever you need.
Okay, I'm gonna practice mute you. Uh-huh. Oh, I have to ask to unmute you.
Oh yeah, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, perfect. And with 13 people, you should, I don't know, however you want to run it, you should be fine. But then I'll let you mute everybody if needed or.
Yeah, I'll keep it muted probably during my whole presentation and then unmute everybody to do a Q&A.
Okay, and I think it says that people should be able to join at any time. Sometimes it makes you let people in, so it might pop up that there's someone in a waiting room, but I think I disabled the waiting room. So it shouldn't make you, but if it does, that might be what it is, so.
Hey, oh, and yeah. the link that you sent me, I had somebody who wanted to join today, but it was closed apparently on Eventbrite. Can I send them that same link you sent me, or will that?
Yeah, no, you can send them that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool.
Yep, that should work. If you have any issues, just send me a text and I'll see if I can pop back on.
Okay, will do.
Yeah, so, okay, good luck.
You're the best.
Okay, talk to you later.
Okay, see you. Bye.
Bye.
Her name is Sarah. 9, 8, 7. Okay. 10, 9, 8, 7. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Hi, David.
Hey, Morgan.
How's it
How are you
going?
doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Pretty well.
How many non-URA people do we have coming tonight, do you know? Oh, are you there?
Hey, I lost you there for a minute. Can you hear me?
You're kind of coming in and out.
Weird. Let me make sure I don't have anything else open.
Deliver it even better. Introducing Domino's Carside Delivery. Just pull
Can you hear me?
online and we bring your food to you.
Yes.
Hi,
Hey.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Am I on video or just my voice?
Just
your
voice.
Okay. I'm trying to find my remote to turn off my TV.
I'll probably mute everyone
Okay.
once I get started.
Okay. No. Oh, found it. How are you feeling?
Fine. I just went for a walk and it was painful.
Oh no.
Just having all kinds of weird pains, but
Did you walk very far?
no, it was only like a 15-minute walk, so it was not
Oh,
terrible.
good for you.
It was good. It's good to know that I can still do it. The month
Slowly,
now, we'll
surely.
see how that goes.
I totally remember that.
Hey, David, there were a couple people that tried to get tickets today. Do you know when they stopped giving them out on Eventbrite for this?
I don't. And I've kind of let Evelyn handle the Eventbrite stuff, and so I'm not very savvy with it, to be honest.
Yeah, me neither. People kept asking me and I was like, ooh, I don't
I
know.
know. I made sure that I had the link, and that was about all the Eventbrite stuff that I did. So yeah.
Hmm. Well, it is 7. I think we might give people 2 more minutes to join in and then we'll get started.
That's about what I did, I think, for I think that's how we handled our previous trash talks. Gave them maybe 7:03, 7:04, and then
Yeah. Does anybody have exciting Halloween plans or just pandemic Halloween plans?
Pandemic.
Probably pandemic. We're gonna go launch some pumpkins in a sling into a field.
That is
That sounds-
exciting.
It's fun.
That's an exciting pandemic Halloween plan right there.
Well, it's good social distancing, and the cows eat the pumpkins, so I think.
Okay, we'll get going in 1 minute. Okay, I think let's go ahead and get started and people can just join as they will. So I would love to hear, I know much of this audience, but I would love to hear just a really quick introduction from everybody so that I know who I'm talking to. So I will just run down the list, and if you'll just give me sort of your name and your interest in food waste, that would be awesome. It looks like Dana Williamson is at the top, and Dana could be giving this as well as I could, but Dana, if you'll introduce yourself for everyone else's benefit, that'd be awesome.
Well, that's very kind, but you are rock at this. So Dana Williamson, I'm founder and president of Wasteless Solutions, which is a food waste nonprofit dedicated to the education, prevention, and diversion of food waste.
That's a good elevator pitch. So David Staub, you're next. Don't be intimidated because hopefully we haven't stacked the whole audience with people like Dana.
Not a problem. Hi, my name's David Staub. I live in Orem, and we do a lot of recycling here, but we also have been composting, and it's been great fertilizer. And I saw this and I thought, hey, if I can learn how to improve my fertilizer and not waste food, I'd be open to learning. So I'm just here to learn.
Very good. Well, welcome. Thanks for showing
Thank you.
up. Okay, David Johnston, you're next on my list.
Yep. I am with the URA board. I'm serving as co-president at this time. I also work for Salt Lake City Waste and Recycling as permits coordinator for the city of Salt Lake. I work with businesses and apartments and construction and demolition groups, also special event organizers, all focusing on maximizing recycling.
Awesome. Okay. Elizabeth, you are next.
Hi, I am Elizabeth Barrett. I work actually with Morgan at Wasatch Resource Recycling, and I'm just here to see and hear more that I can do at home and support Morgan. So thank you.
So thanks for being here, Elizabeth. Okay, Melinda, I have you next.
Hi, I'm Melinda Cummings. I am a member of the Lehigh Sustainability Committee
under recycling. And outside of that, I would just really like to learn how to be better at home with food and food waste, and hopefully can learn a little bit about composting, fingers crossed, because I'm interested in that as well.
Cool. Okay, great. Nancy, I have you next.
Hi, I'm just a regular old consumer, and I'm just here to see what more I can do from home to do some more recycling.
I love it. Nancy, where are you from?
Salt Lake City.
Okay, beautiful. And then Sarah Bateman, you are last but not least.
Hi, yeah, Sarah Bateman. I am down in Orem, and I'm on the city's Natural Resources Stewardship Committee, and then also work with building a county coalition on sustainability down in Utah County. And as on a personal level, I've got changing family, you know, a family that has different dietary interests, and my oldest went off to college, so he's eating campus food. And with the shrinking family and trying to address the different food needs and the amount of people who are eating at a time is kind of an interesting transition for me. And so,
yeah, for
and
sure.
also busyness, you know, life busyness, you kind of ebbs and flows. And so sometimes I'm relying more on convenience foods and the challenges with that. Yeah, anyway, so yeah.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad to have you all here. Just by way of introduction of myself, I am Morgan Bowerman, and I work for Wasatch Resource Recovery, which is an anaerobic digester facility located in North Salt Lake. We make energy out of food waste, and my job is to convince people to send us their food waste in whatever way possible. And so I spend my day talking about food waste, but largely on a commercial scale, on a manufacturer scale or a grocery store or restaurant even. So I'm usually talking to people who have massive quantities of food waste. But my passion for food waste prevention definitely started at home. So I'm really excited to be able to bring this to a much smaller scale and be a little bit more personal today. So I am going to share my screen here, and I've got about a 20 to 30 minute PowerPoint. Let's see, there we go. And so everybody is doing a really good job of muting themselves, so I won't feel the need to mute everyone, but if there's some background noise, I'll just hit mute everyone. And then after that presentation, I will just feel free to open it up to lots of Q&A. So definitely keep your questions. And I'll for sure want to spend plenty of time talking through whatever it is that you guys want to chat about. Can everybody see the PowerPoint with the food waste title page?
Looks good. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started then. So back in 2012, let's see if this will work. There it goes. Dana Gunders worked for NRDC, and she wrote this paper. It's a very long paper on food waste and how we are wasting up to about 40% of it and sending it to the landfill. And that sort of blew the doors wide open on the waste diversion world. Nobody really understood that that's how much we were wasting. And because food waste is so massive in resource consumption, it was sort of this issue that everybody thought, well, that can't be real, because if that's real, we're wasting a whole lot of stuff. But it turned out the more she dug into it, the more real it became. And so in the last 8 years, I would say that this paper alone was the catalyst for just changing the landscape of waste diversion and how we think of it, and how we think of climate change and what we can do personally to solve it. So I am definitely going to give you guys my top 10 tips on how to stop wasting food at home, but I have a very hard time getting into that without explaining to people why we need to care so much about this, because I think if we know the why, then we'll be able to do the what a whole lot better. So in terms of wasting 40% of the food waste every day, that sort of is a nebulous figure out there. Like, what does that actually mean? Well, that's the equivalent of 2 football stadiums worth of food waste every single day. So when the Super Bowl comes around, if you're not a football fan, most people watch the Super Bowl still. Just imagine that stadium being full of not just people and football players, but also just filled up with food, and double it and think that's how much we are sending to the landfill pretty much every single day. If you want to look beyond the food, I mentioned the resources a minute ago. Food waste is a $218 billion industry. So we spend, between all of the resources that it takes to grow, transport, purchase, throw away, landfill food waste, we are spending $218 billion a year on it. I think as a country, we could all agree that there are better things that we could do with our money. That's government money, that's taxpayer money, that's just your own personal income. Like, this is just a lot of money that is being wasted. 10% of the US energy budget is used to grow food. And when we waste 40% of that, we are wasting a solid 4% of the US energy budget, just sending it to the landfill. Am I doing that math right? No, that would be 0.4%, I think. But still, that's a lot of energy that is being consumed for food waste. 50% of the US land goes toward growing food. When we waste 40% of that, we're wasting a whole huge chunk of American soil that is never getting utilized for its intended purpose. We're growing it, we're depleting our soils, we're utilizing all of those resources and then just sending it to the landfill. 80% of our fresh water in this country is used to grow food. And that's the one that, being out here in the West, we know what a massive, we're like 12 years into a 7-year drought or something like that. Like, this is a travesty that we know about wasting water and not having the water to just throw away like that. But when we waste our food, we are wasting massive amounts of water. And then lastly, 16% of US methane emissions are created by food waste that is hanging out in the landfills here in this country. So methane, for those of you who aren't as familiar with it, is a greenhouse gas, and it is far more noxious than carbon dioxide. We all run around worrying about our, carbon footprint, but we don't think so much about our methane footprint. But methane is somewhere between 20 to 120 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So when we're sending that banana peel off to the landfill, it's going to create methane. That's what will happen. And I'll talk about that in just a second, but let's carry on this methane for a second. If food waste were a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases. That is how much food we're wasting and how much greenhouse gas it is emitting. So China would be number 1, followed by America, and then food waste would be 3rd. So it is a huge problem. And so what happens in a landfill is you send that food waste to a landfill. And if you've ever been to one, you will know this. If you haven't been to one, boy, I highly recommend it. It will change your life. We send food waste to the landfill. It gets buried beneath a whole bunch of garbage throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, they have to put a daily cover on it. They've got to cover that landfill every single night. Then the next day they pile more garbage on top of it, and then more dirt. And then the next day there's more garbage and more dirt and more garbage and more dirt. So essentially what ends up happening is that landfill gets sealed off from any other exposure. So there's no oxygen, there's no water, there's nothing else getting in there. So it's preserving essentially everything that's in there quite well. But what does break down is breaking down without oxygen. And when organic matter breaks down without oxygen in a landfill, it emits methane. And that methane is pretty much vented straight into the atmosphere. Even the landfills that try to capture their methane in their greenhouse gas and capture all of those landfill gases, they can't capture that methane until the cell that they are dumping in is closed. And that's pretty much across the board. So in the first several years of that food waste hanging out in the landfill, anything that is breaking down is just being vented into the atmosphere. So there's a whole lot of methane heading out into the atmosphere. The other thing about the food waste going to the landfill is food waste and organic waste in general, which is all creating that methane, is the largest sector of what goes into a landfill by far. So these landfills are just getting filled up with organic waste that should not head there, creating massive greenhouse gas emissions. And then beyond just what's happening in the landfill, if you want to make it a little bit more personal, an average family of 4 spends about $1,600 on food waste every single year. I love this quote by Dana Gunders. She's the one that wrote that NRDC paper I talked about at the beginning. And she was quoted in the documentary Just Eat It, which if you have the chance to watch it, is just wonderful. But she says, imagine walking out of a grocery store with 4 bags of groceries, dropping 1 in the parking lot and just not bothering to pick it up. That's essentially what we're doing. So it is just a crazy amount of food waste. I think all of us can agree that if somebody gave us $1,600, we could think of something better to do with it than just buy food that we will never eat or that no one will ever eat. And we are doing all of this while 1 in 7 Americans are food insecure. And not only that, but 1 in 7 Americans are food insecure, and we are wasting over 1,200 calories per person per day. That's not per food insecure person per day, that's per everybody. So all 7 people are wasting 1,200 calories, or we're wasting enough that we could feed all of these people 1,200 calories per person per day. I think they say the average female really only needs 1,300 calories to have like a healthy diet. So that is an incredible amount of food waste that we are producing and just sending to the landfill. And I was looking it up just earlier today, and the statistics I saw for Utah are even worse, that 1 in 6 Utahns are food insecure and 1 in 5 Utah children are food insecure. So it becomes an environmental issue, it's a monetary issue, and it's clearly a moral issue. We have no real right to waste this much food when there are so many hungry people out there. Okay, I think that is it. I'm off my soapbox now. So now you know why I'm so passionate about food waste. It is a huge problem in so many different ways. And now I just want to talk a little bit about what we can do on a personal scale to make that food waste less of a problem. When people ask me, what can I do about climate change? Food waste is always my #1 thing that I tell them. This is something that every single one of us has an incredible amount of control over, more so than pretty much anything on a personal level. This is very, very personal. We buy this food, we plan what we're going to eat, and then we throw it away, and we have complete control over that process. We don't have control over UTA and what they choose to do or don't do. We don't have control over, you know, the fossil fuel companies and how they're choosing to get their stuff extracted out of the world. We can certainly be advocates for those things, and we can do things like ride our bike, but the food waste is something that comes into our life because we bring it there, and it leaves our life because of choices that we make. So, and it has a massive, if we all did our part with food waste, we could change the course of climate change for sure. There's a lot of data out there about how food waste is one of the biggest things that we could make a big dent with climate change globally. So my top 10 things for you personally in your kitchen to do are as follows. So number 10 is to know what you have. So that means it's really hard to prevent food waste if you don't know what you have. And I would venture to guess that the #1 reason food is wasted in your own kitchen is because you forgot that you had some kind of food that existed. So I recommend highly creating an inventory. So in this little picture here, you can see there's 3 inventories listed. One is a pantry inventory, one is a fridge inventory, and one is a freezer inventory. And I have a link that I can share with you guys there's a million of these online. If you want to just Google one, there's a million blogs that have a little printable version that you can print off. I created one of my own just on an Excel spreadsheet. This one is empty, but it's been sitting on my fridge. I have like a stack of them. This one is for my freezer specifically. It's a little worse for the wear. It's been there for a little while. So what I just want to show you a couple of mine just so that you know you don't have to get cutesy with it. You don't have to print one off of Google. This one is just a list that I have, and that's my pantry inventory. So what that means is that you should go through your pantry. I recommend taking everything out of it. And then as you put stuff back in, the stuff that you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that I had this. I should probably figure out something to do with it. Write it down on your inventory. So on my pantry inventory, for example, I have kidney beans that are dry and had been back there for quite a long time. And I was like, okay, I can make minestrone, or I can make some rice and beans one night, some chow mein noodles that we had bought for a specific dish and then had not really utilized them again. So I was like, oh, we need to make that dish again or come up with something else. Some raw cashews that we bought by accident, thinking they were roasted, but instead they were raw. So there's a lot of cool vegan creamy dishes that you can make with raw cashews. So that's on our list now of things to make. So you go through your whole pantry, you go through your whole fridge, and you go through your whole freezer, and you write down those things that you sort of have forgotten that they exist. And then that helps you with sort of knowing what you have. And knowing what you have is half the battle or more. Pretty much the rest of my whole slides here will go off of knowing what you have and how important that is and how this will be the building block for everything else. And I would recommend, unless you are a super organized person who, when you bring something new into the kitchen, will write that down on your inventory list, I would just recommend doing it about every 6 months. So do it in the spring and do it in the fall, or do it in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the winter. But about every 6 months, I would recommend going through your fridge, going through your freezer, and going through your pantry, and just making sure you know exactly what's in there and that you use up the stuff that's on that inventory list. Okay, so next, as you go through and make this inventory, make sure you know your dates. So I've got 3 examples here, one that says better if used by, one that says best before, and one that says sell by. So this is all very confusing for most people. What do these mean? What is the difference between them? Is it really expired? What do I do with it? I got an email from someone just earlier today asking if the company that I work for could take her canned goods that were expired. So I responded to her and told her that we're working on being able to make that happen for an individual household. But that in the meantime, she should think twice about getting rid of those cans, because for the most part, best before or better if used by or best if used by or anything along those lines does not by any means means that something is expired and that it's going to make you sick and you will probably die if you consume it. So all that means is that it is at its peak freshness, that something is the best by this date, and then it could possibly be slightly less best if you eat it afterward. So I told that lady, I have eaten canned goods that were expired for 2 years before, and just opened it up and was like, well, let's see what's in here. And it was fine. And I would never have known that it was expired if I hadn't looked at the dates. So I always say to use your 5 senses. So the number one thing that you want to do is to look at it. How does it look? If it looks wrong, if you can visibly see mold or something else on there, then by all means, do not eat it. Then you want to use your sniffer. How does it smell? Does it smell like it has gone off? If it does, then you don't have to eat it. If it smells fine, it probably is fine. And then last, I would say just give it a little taste. Like it's not going to kill you. I promise it's not going to kill you. So just give it a little taste. If it tastes bad, then don't eat it. But on Sunday, my husband went to make waffles and pulled out the milk from the fridge, and it was a little foul. And he looked at the date, and it was a couple weeks past its best by date, or its sell by date is usually what happens with milk. And he was like, oh no, I don't know if we can make these now. And I was like, yes, we can. What do you think curdled milk is? It's yogurt, it's sour cream. Like, we eat curdled milk purposefully all the time. But I think, I know dairy products are the #1 thing that's thrown away in a personal household kitchen. So often we smell that milk and it doesn't smell like the milk that you eat with your cereal. I wouldn't recommend still eating it with your cereal, but making it with something like waffles is perfect. It's just like buttermilk. So I convinced him to use it, and we made the waffles and they were delicious. And you would have never known. If we had served it to somebody else, they would have never known that we had used milk that was past its date. So as you go through that inventory and you find salad dressing or canned goods or whatever else it is that is past its best by date, do not get rid of it. Just put it on the inventory list and know that you need to use it up soon, because it might be past its very peak, but you probably, if you use it up soon, you'll never know. Okay, so number 8. This is the second thing you want to do as you are making your refrigerator inventory list. You want to create an Eat Me First bin. So this one is a nice little Pinterest picture of an Eat Me First bin. I have mine here to show you. This is just a little plastic Tupperware that we keep on our top shelf. The top shelf in the fridge is the coldest, so it's a good place to store things that are going to go off. Right now, the only thing we have in it is this little box of thyme that we need to use up. So that goes in our little Eat Me First bin. Usually we have a half an onion or a quarter of a bell pepper or whatever else it is that we have used part of, but haven't used the whole thing. The other thing I would recommend doing is at the end of the week, as you're meal planning and making your grocery list, is to throw things into that Eat Me First bin that are about to go bad. So I often call the crisper drawers the place where good intentions go to die. We buy all of this produce, we have really good intentions to eat it, and then it sits there and it dies because it is out of sight, out of mind. So go through those crisper drawers, pull the stuff out that's about to go bad and stick it in your Eat Me First bin and make sure you're using it up. Then my next thing is plan your meals. So now that you have all 3 of those things, you've got your food inventory, you've got, you know your dates, and now you've got your Eat Me First bin. So you know what needs to be used between your inventory and your Eat Me First bin. Now you need to sit down and make a meal plan. My husband and I, you can, again, get some of these off of Pinterest, and I've got some links I can give out to everybody once I'm done with this presentation, because I can't figure out how to give you links while I'm in presentation mode. But again, you can just plan it. My husband and I always do it via text. We'll sit down and we'll just write out, like, here's what I can make this week, here's what you can make this week. So we do our meal plan via text, so it's all online, but you can do it however works for you and your family. So when you make your meal plan, just make sure that you're looking at your food inventory and your Eat Me First bin and use up those ingredients that you have that need to be used. It makes meal planning super easy. You don't even hardly have to come up with the ideas. You already have the ingredients there. You know exactly what you're going to make out of that. You just need to fill it in and make sure that you have that plan. Having a plan for your meals will create less food waste for sure. You'll not only use up ingredients, but it will prevent you from buying additional ingredients and then having a surplus that you won't be able to eat. And then right along with this is shop with a list. So as you're making that meal plan, make sure you make your grocery list at the same time, and make that list and then shop with it. So that is another huge factor that factors into creating food waste in your own kitchen, is impulse buying. So when you go through a grocery store and you don't stick to your grocery list and you just start impulse buying, then all of a sudden you've got more food than you can consume within a week, and you're wasting the food that needed to be eaten already. So make sure you're shopping with a list. That's not to say you can't ever impulse buy or buy yourself treats or whatever. Obviously that's a possibility. And we always work into our meal plan a couple nights for leftovers so that we make sure that we can consume up some of this stuff. And sometimes it's a free-for-all night, or something else on a meal plan so that we can make sure that this food is being consumed. Okay. Which brings me again to eat your leftovers. So now that you have created your inventories and your meal plans and your grocery shopped, and now you're cooking with all of these ingredients that were once going to go to waste but are no longer, you make this big old pan of lasagna, and then you only eat a third of it for dinner that night. So now you have a big old pan of lasagna to stick into your refrigerator. Don't let your leftovers die in the fridge. Make sure you actually eat them. So that's why, again, I recommend building into your meal plan 1 or 2 nights for consuming leftovers. In my family right now, we're just a family of 2. So if we are cooking 3 nights a week, that gives us plenty to eat on another 3 nights a week, pretty much. So you don't have to cook every day. It'll make your life easier if you just eat those leftovers. And so I've got 2 pictures here. One is just leftovers that you're gonna pull out and stick it in your microwave or your little oven and heat them up. And then the other one is reinventing those leftovers. So it goes from being some sort of a chili stew to being some sort of nacho dish. So my husband is not as big on leftovers as I am, but if I reinvent those leftovers and turn them into something else delicious, he'll be just fine with it. And in fact, if I serve him up leftovers, he's fine too, but he's pretty leftover blind. He will open the fridge and just be like, man, there's nothing to eat here. I'm like, there's several meals stacked. There's plenty to eat. But he's a little leftover blind. Don't let that be you. Don't be the leftover blind person. Be the person in your family who pulls those leftovers out and sends a little, gives, you know, makes sure that everybody is eating them and consuming them. Okay, so then that brings me to freeze your unused ingredients. So when you've got those leftovers that lasagna is sitting in your fridge and you've done your job and you've eaten a portion of it every day for the next week or 5 days, and then you realize there's still a third of a pan of lasagna in there that you're not going to be able to eat up before it goes bad. Stick it in another container and throw it in the freezer, and then it will be good for months to come. The great thing about freezing unused meals or ingredients is that in a night to come, when your meal plan goes out the window because Little League went 3 hours over and everybody's exhausted and starving, all you have to do is pull something out of the freezer and thaw it out, and then there's a ready-made meal right there for you. So freezing your unused ingredients, this is food waste's best friend, the freezer is. So make sure you're freezing that stuff up. Okay, and then next is reduce your portion sizes. So this is a big one that is not as intuitive, but is really true. We will pile our plate high and our eyes will be bigger than our stomachs. We can't consume all of the food that we stuck onto our plate. And then at the end of the night, when you're doing dishes, you scrape what's on your plate into the garbage disposal or the garbage can. And then you wrap up what is left in the pan and put that in the fridge and eat it in the future. So the food waste is created from what you put on your plate and not necessarily what you made. So I always say use smaller portion sizes. And if you look at these 2 plates, the portion sizes are exactly the same, but you trick your mind with using a smaller plate and it looks like you have a much bigger portion there. So if you use a smaller plate, reduce that portion size, you might fill up, but if not, then go back for seconds. But just don't give yourself seconds to start with, because the food that's on our plates will be wasted. The food that's still left in the pan will hopefully be reused as leftovers. Okay, and then this brings us to saving your food scraps. So I can show you what I do with mine. Got them in my freezer here. And it's just like this bag that you see on the left. It's just a Ziploc bag that's got all of my onion skins and some garlic skins and garlic cloves and celery ends and carrot ends and all those little vegetable ends. And I just throw them all into a Ziploc bag. And then when it's full, I make vegetable stock. And then I use that vegetable stock. Anytime any recipe calls for chicken stock or beef stock, I use vegetable stock instead. So you can substitute those pretty much across the board and you won't notice much of a difference. I never notice a difference, but I suppose there could be someone out there with a better palate than mine that would notice. So that's what I use constantly. We don't ever really buy vegetable stock or chicken stock or beef stock because I make this often enough. So I made this, I don't know, a week or two ago. So these are just the scraps that I've got since then. And I just save those up, and then when the bag is full, I dump it all into a big stock pot and I add a bunch of spices or and herbs. And then I let it simmer on my stovetop for a couple hours, and then I strain out all of the little scraps and I make up and then I put into just little containers, usually leftover containers like sour cream containers or something like that. And I'll just label it as veggie stock and I throw that in my freezer, and then I pull one out and I always have a defrosted one in the fridge. And sometimes I'll make little ice cube trays with vegetable stock that I can throw into like a pasta sauce or something else like that. But it is an amazing way to cut down on those scraps or to give them a second life. There's nothing wrong with the carrot peel that I took off. I just, when I eat a carrot plain, I just don't want the peel on it. So it's a great way to use those up. And then my very last tip is to compost your scraps. So somebody said that they were hoping to learn a little bit more about compost. And I do have a link to Recycle Utah that I'll send out as well, so that you have that. And they have lots of good information there on creating your own composter in your backyard. This is the compost canister that we keep right next to our sink. And it's got, right now, it's got some grapevines and an apple core in it. It's got this little filter on the inside so that, and a little rubber seal around here so that it keeps the smell out, it keeps the pests out. My kitchen does not stink like food waste, I promise. But so I throw all of my fruit and veggie scraps in there, eggshells, you can put your coffee grounds in there, anything like that can go in there. If you are lucky enough to live in Salt Lake City limits or somewhere where there is offered a green waste pickup, you can put any kind of fruit or vegetable scrap as well as coffee grounds or eggshells into that green waste bin. So it can go right in there with your grass clippings and leaves and branches, etc. If you're not so lucky, then that's where you should look into backyard composting. And people make backyard composting out to be very, very difficult. If you are super sensitive to pests, it might be more difficult for you to figure out how to do it. In our neighborhood, there are a lot of rats because we live near the irrigation line. So at least that's what somebody told me. So I don't know that you could successfully do a compost bin in my neighborhood without having some sort of a rodent around. But I know that in other neighborhoods, there are not that same problem. But also, maybe it's just not so bad. Like maybe you don't have to worry so much about that. It will just depend a little bit on your tolerance level. But what you do not have to do is buy the $400 or $500 compost bin or even the $100 compost bin. You can also bury your food waste if you don't want the rodents to get to it. You can dig a shallow pit and then cover that pit and go out and uncover it and turn it and then cover it back up. So there's a lot of ways to successfully do compost without having to worry about the smells and the pests. And if you have enough of your carbon versus nitrogen, then it should break down pretty well and it won't create smells and it won't attract the pests. So there are lots and lots of ways to make that compost be successful and really cut down on the waste that you're creating, not just with the food waste from your kitchen, but also the yard waste from your garden. I drive by my neighborhood all the time. We can opt in and pay a little extra to have green waste diverted, but it is extra. I'm not as lucky to live within Salt Lake City limits. My backdoor neighbor does, but I don't. So I drive down the street all the time and just see the garbage cans chock full of leaves and branches and grass clippings, and it just breaks my heart because that stuff should not be heading to the landfill. Okay, I do have one bonus slide because it is almost Thanksgiving and we are coming up on this. I wanted to introduce you to the guesstimator. So savethefood.com is a website that if you are interested in food waste, they have some really great things, and I'll send out this link as well. But the guesstimator is amazing. So you get on there and you fill out how many people you think are going to come to a meal. So as I'm planning Thanksgiving, it's just going to be me and my parents this year. So there's only 4 of us. A nice small governor approved under that limit of people coming together. But you can put in, if you have average eaters or big eaters, you can figure out how many, and then you add in you can put in how many leftovers do you think you want to have. So if I want to have 7 leftover meals, I can put that in, and then you put in, are you serving a turkey dinner or something equivalent? And you kind of go through, and I'm going to do a casserole, and I'm going to do pies, and I'm going to do, you sort of pick which kinds of foods you're going to make, and it will tell you how much you should make. How big of a turkey should you buy for 4 people? Probably not a 15-pound turkey. That might be a little bit of an overkill. Most people are not going to eat 4 pounds of turkey. So this is a really great way. I think we, especially as Americans, show a lot of our love with food. So when we invite somebody to a meal, we want to make it huge, and we want to, do ourselves proud and show our guests that we love them because we created all this food. But this is a really way of sort of scaling that back a little bit, bringing it in, having more realistic expectations. And the thing that I love about it is that you can plan for leftovers. So who doesn't want extra turkey and stuffing the next day? Everybody does. But this will just sort of help you figure that out a little bit better. Okay, then this is my contact information. Again, Wasatch Resource Recovery is who I work for. And this is my contact info. Go ahead and snap a photo of that really quickly. And then I will, if you need to contact me, I will exit screen sharing and send you guys some links and look at, I know I got some questions while I was giving that. Oh, okay, these are not questions. These are just really good tips. Oh no, Sarah, I hope you were able to finally see what I was showing you. I agree. I put eggs in everything. Old pizza, I will cut it up and put it in my frying pan and throw an egg in there with it. It's an amazing way to use up leftovers by putting an egg into something. Okay, so are there any questions? Who has a question or a comment?
One thing I started doing, just it's small, but to your earlier point, it all helps, is in my smoothies, I put the strawberry stem. Like, you don't notice it. I know if I eat a strawberry just by hand, I won't eat that typically. I could, but I don't. But at least in my smoothies. And then if, they're about to go bad, I can just freeze them full too. I don't have to dig that out. So then I just throw frozen one with the stem.
Yeah, I heard of somebody doing that and I was like, why have I never thought of that before? Because it's just like throwing spinach into your smoothie. It's just a little bit of greens. You won't even notice that it's there. That's a great tip. Who else has one?
I won't share a tip right now, maybe later, but actually I was baking a dinner salad while I was listening because I was like, okay, I got to get working on those veggies. But my true confessions this summer, I wanted to support the local growers. And so I signed up for not 1, but 2 CSAs down here in Utah County. And, I'm doing my part to support the farmers, make sure they don't go out of business. But my family doesn't quite eat as many vegetables as I wish they would. And so then I had a lot of leftovers that I'm like, oh, I should probably just give it to, and I would give some to neighbors and stuff like that. But I kept thinking, well, no, we're going to figure out a way. We're going to use this. We'll make something amazing. And so sometimes if you're in a household where not everybody is as interested in cuisine. Not that I'm a super foodie, but I'm interested. And so then if it's more just kind of a matter of fuel, I don't know. I didn't really say anything helpful there, but just if anybody was feeling, shame, I'm right there. I'm outing myself for you.
Well, and the thing is, I talk about this, I think about this all day, every day, and there is still food waste that comes out of my fridge regularly. And it drives me batty when it happens. And I have a very guilty conscience when it comes to food waste because this is my career. But if I'm doing it, everybody's doing it. So for sure, nobody is perfect at this. And I definitely don't mean to like set myself up as the shining example who never lets anything go to waste. It's for sure happens, but there's so much that we can do to prevent it for sure. I am sending out some of these links that I referred to.
Can you freeze most any vegetable, like let's say spinach or anything like that? Is that all freezable?
I mean, spinach for sure is freezable. If you can find it in the freezer section, then you probably can freeze it. There are things that I think don't freeze as well. My husband and I were just talking about things that have noodles in them. Sometimes just the noodles get super mushy if you freeze them. Tomatoes don't always freeze super great, but I would say give it a shot, like experiment with it and see how it goes. And then you'll know in the future.
I mean, I guess if you're just putting it in sauces and stuff, it doesn't really matter, but I didn't think about that. If it's in the freezer section, then sure, it can be frozen.
Mm-hmm. And that's another tip that I didn't bring up, but as you go through your crisper drawers at the end of the week, as you're meal planning or figuring out, what you need to get at the grocery store, and you're creating that Eat Me First bin, those vegetables that are just a little bit past their prime, and maybe you wouldn't want to cut that tomato up and put it on a sandwich as a slice of tomato, but it's not moldy, it's just a little squishy. Make it into a soup or a sauce. That's the perfect way to get it used up. It still tastes delicious. You never know. Many grocery stores on their buffet line, actually, so they're prepared foods, they are using up produce that they pulled off of their shelves that was past the date where a consumer would buy it or past its prime. So often those soups and stews and other things that you'll buy at the grocery store, they're utilizing that food that they probably wouldn't have been able to sell otherwise. It's one way that they sort of save their margins for food. So it tastes just fine if you cook it up into a soup. So do that for sure.
Great idea.
I have to say, one of the good things that came out of the quarantine for me, because as we were all cleaning closets and things like that, I certainly cleaned my kitchen cabinets and pantries, like you said, so that I knew it was there. And then because I wasn't going to the store as much, it was like, okay, what can I make out of these ingredients? Which then sent me to go find new recipes. So what I've enjoyed about it was because I really did get my pantry down to next to nothing. I really like that feeling. So now I try to keep it that way. So there's good things that came out of the quarantine.
Absolutely. It's so nice. I'm the same. I love having a sparse pantry because I love being able to look in my pantry and know, like, just being able to see everything that's in there so that I know that there's nothing hiding in a corner in the back, for sure. But another thing that I'm a big proponent of that it sounds like you're basically describing is doing a buy nothing week, where you try to make meals just out of the food that's in your household. And every once in a while you have to have an ingredient, there's an ingredient you really need to be able to make that dish that you want. But there's so much that we can make. My husband is the king of being able to say there's nothing in the house, but I'll whip something up and he makes some delicious meal. He's super good at that. So trying to do that for a week or 3 days in a row where you're not going to buy anything, you're just going to, you know, use up what's in your fridge, freezer, and pantry. It's a really good way to get through that food before you have a chance to waste it.
Right. And it's also been fun trying to find new recipes for some of those ingredients that I bought for a different recipe I was making, like a ricotta cheese or a coconut, you know, kind of things like that. It was like, okay, now what else can I do with this that I still have half that package in the refrigerator, you know? I found some good new recipes.
That's the best. And variety is the spice of life for sure. So that goes for food as well.
I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, I had to step away for a little bit, but one thing that I did a while ago, we were going to be getting a new refrigerator. And I didn't want to get an enormous refrigerator because the bigger the fridge, the more likely your food's going to get lost.
Yes.
And so I wanted a counter depth refrigerator that was a small, you know, kind of a smaller profile, but they only make counter depth for the giant ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so I couldn't find the size fridge that I wanted. So I just got a small size standard fridge with the fridge on top and the freezer on the bottom. But then to try to create that sense of a counter depth fridge, I put line on their sides gallons of water in the back of each shelf. So that food couldn't go any farther back. So it created a shallower refrigerator. In theory, it uses less energy. You always have cold water on hand because I don't have like a fridge tap or anything like that. But having those gallons of water, like kind of creating a false wall in the back of the fridge, made the food much easier to see. I couldn't get anything lost in the back. Yeah. And so that was helpful.
I love that. I'm going to throw my parents under the bus here, but I don't think any of you know them. So hopefully we'll get back to them. But they have a massive fridge. There's only 2 of them and it is packed full. And every time I go to their house, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I know there's stuff in here that you guys have no idea that it's there or what it is. And their fridge has always been that way. And before I became a food waste crazy person, I know that I went through their fridge several times to clean it out and threw away all kinds of condiments, especially. They have just so many condiments. So I threw away a whole bunch of condiments of theirs that had been expired for several years that I knew they weren't going to use. Today, I would say, let's use this up in a meal today. I wouldn't throw it away, but yeah, the bigger the fridge, absolutely, the more space you have to just stack it full of stuff. And when it gets into the back, then that's where it goes to die. Same with the crisper drawers. You pull out that, you know, whatever it is that's in the back and it's moldy and gross and you have forgotten about it. There's a lovely video that Save the Food did with oh my gosh, I didn't tell you all this. Most of you know, some of you know, I'm 8 months pregnant and I have pregnancy brain so badly. The Ad Council, is that the National Ad Council? Is that who it is? On the life of a strawberry. And it's really good. You guys should all Google it and watch it. And it goes through the whole life of a strawberry where it's grown in the sun and watered. And then somebody comes by and picks it and puts it into a carton. And then it ends up in the grocery store, and then somebody picks it up at the grocery store, and then it goes into the fridge and it gets shoved into the back, and then it sadly gets all moldy, and then somebody pulls it out of the back of the fridge and throws it away. And it's really a poignant lesson on just exactly how much we're wasting when we waste that food. But our fridges can be a real culprit of it. So that fridge inventory is one that probably needs to be done more than every 6 months. That's the one that I would recommend. Maybe, making sure you've got that Eat Me First bin so that you're going through your fridge on a fairly regular basis so that you can prevent that food waste.
An interesting thing I recently learned, and I just found a link because I wanted to see if I could get the number. It's not the whole story, but something I'd never thought of. But the Joy of Cooking, that cookbook, the latest edition,
Mhm.
they actually, in many recipes, reduced the serving size. So a recipe that used to
Nice.
serve 12, well, no, it's actually bad in the sense that, so it used to serve 12. So say it had, so the ingredients didn't change, but it used to serve 12. Now they're saying it serves 9, for example. So it's telling us to eat more, right?
Oh, so they're not actually reducing
Right.
anything. They're
Sorry,
just
yeah.
saying, okay.
Yeah, the ingredient, I know, I realized I worded that wrong.
Because if they made, because who cooks for 12 people? Like only for Thanksgiving, right? So if you're making this massive meal,
Come on, Morgan, we're in Utah.
That's true. That's true. There are probably many Sunday dinners around this state that are serving 12 people.
But the problem, right, is now it goes to that obesity and overeating that now we think, oh, okay, like if I half that and said I'm only going to feed 6 people, I still probably have enough for 9, right?
Yeah.
So that,
yeah.
And we don't know sometimes until you make it, then you're like, uh-oh.
It's really true. We made Mexican rice. Is that last night or the night before? And my husband was doing it. And so he pulled out, it was 2 cups of rice, which for 2 people is way more rice than you need. So I have eaten leftovers twice. We ate it for dinner. I have eaten leftovers twice and he's eaten leftovers of it once. And we still have at least 2 cups of cooked rice hanging out in our fridge. And we're out of everything else that we used with our burritos. All of our veggies and beans that we cooked up are gone. So I'm thinking of trying to do a Mexican Asian fusion and make some fried rice out of the Mexican rice. I'll let you know how that goes.
Love it.
Just a question. So you said that the green waste you can also throw like eggshells and stuff, because I was unclear. I thought it was just for grass and like tree branches and such things as that.
Yes. So I basically say anything that was alive in it's still in the form where it was picked and grown out of the dirt, then you can put that in your green waste bin. So potato peels and banana peels and apple cores, all of that kind of stuff can all go into the green waste bin. But then specifically eggshells and coffee grounds are really, really good for compost. So if you have a green waste bin, it is going to a compost facility at one of the landfills. And those compost facilities could use all of the eggshells and coffee grounds they could get. So any kind of a fruit or a vegetable scrap and all your eggshells and coffee grounds are more than welcome to go into those green waste bins for sure. I would never officially recommend putting any other food waste in there, but if something were to slip in there, it wouldn't be the end of the world. So that's one thing. It's not quite like recycling where it has to be a very specific food waste, because the amount of carbon ingredients that they get for their food waste way surpasses the amount of nitrogen ingredients they get. So it's a little less picky when it's on a massive industrial scale like that than your own backyard compost. I wouldn't recommend putting any other kind of food waste in your backyard compost than just the fruits, veggie scraps, eggshells, and compost or coffee grounds. But so these big ones, it's not going to be the end of the world if it happens. I won't officially recommend it, but if it happens, it's not gonna ruin anything.
So on composting, I know there are companies up in Salt Lake that accept residential food waste. I live in Utah County. Is anyone aware of anywhere in Utah County that accepts residential food waste if I don't want to or can't compost my own in my own backyard?
That's a great question. I know that the Southern Utah Valley landfill used to have a compost facility, but I know they shut it down a few years back. I know BYU has their own compost facility and they put food waste from their cafeteria and from the MTC into that compost facility. but I don't know of another one. Sarah, maybe do you know of somewhere?
I don't. Sadly, I learned that a few years ago that our green waste bin, though it is getting collected as green waste bin, it is going to the landfill right now.
That's disheartening.
Yeah, it was really discouraging, but there wasn't a market, I guess. But yeah, I'd love to try to find some food waste options down in Utah County.
Doesn't Chuckarama take it and turn around and serve it? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
David, you naughty.
Hopefully there's no big Chuckarama fans here. The CEO is online here with us. I'm just kidding.
I think what happened with the green waste down here in Utah County was residents were complaining about the smell, and it ended up coming from someone who was doing their own green waste without a permit, and it wasn't the actual facility, but it got it shut down, and it was really upsetting.
This is something that kills me. There are landfills built out in the middle of nowhere, and then as development encroaches upon those landfills, along with a compost facility or a sewer district or wherever it is that our human waste goes, then all of a sudden those residents that are buying up those houses right next to the landfill are complaining and being upset by the smells. And the thing that is so ironic is that they are sending their waste to those very same facilities, and they're not stopping sending that waste to stop that smell, for sure. But yeah, that's one that drives me crazy. And the truth is, if they're doing a compost facility correctly, it doesn't stink. It has a very pungent smell, but it's not one that, like, you can't open your windows and you feel like you're gonna die if you bring this smell into your lungs.
Well, I put grass in with my food composting, and that seems to kill a lot of the food smell.
What was it, David?
I put grass in with my food composting, and that tends to kill the smell, and it spreads a lot easier when I spread it on my gardens.
Awesome. That's a great tip. And live grass counts as nitrogen, and dead grass counts as carbon. So you can have piles that sit there and dry out, and then you can throw them in your compost and use it as carbon, or you can add it in while it's still, just freshly cut, and that counts as its nitrogen content too. So grass is a great one for compost for sure. Okay, well, we are a couple minutes past 8. If there's any other last minute questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But I hope you all saw, I added all the links to the group chat that I'd referenced. So the guesstimator is on there, and a couple links to meal planners, or, a few of those other things, the compost resources up at Recycle Utah. So make sure you grab those if you were interested in any of them, or just give yourself a quick Google search and you'll be able to find them. But I am more than happy to answer questions via email or anything else. So for sure, shoot me some questions in the future if you have any. And otherwise, get going on that inventory and start saving your food waste from your own kitchen.
Morgan, thank you. This was wonderful.
Oh, thank you, David. I appreciate it.
This was awesome. Thank you so much.
A lot of good new ideas. Thanks.
Awesome. So glad to hear that.
Grazie.
You
Thank
bet.
you, Morgan.
My
Nice to
pleasure.
meet you. Thanks, Morgan.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.